Thank you for joining us here today, everyone. Today's presentation of Precision Digital's new loop-powered meters, which allow you to display a 4 to 20 milliamp signal virtually anywhere, will start in one moment. But first, I'm going to go ahead and just address a couple of questions that always come up during these video presentations that I think it would be good to cover at the beginning. So I'll go ahead and just real briefly introduce myself, and hello, everybody. My name is Joe Ryan. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing here at Precision Digital. And I've been with Precision Digital now for 19 years. I've got a lot of experience dealing with the process industry, applications, and design of these kinds of products, and actually started as a product design engineer here. So I think I can share with you today a lot of great insights on loop-powered meters, why you would choose to use them, and specifically, what is so great about this new launch from Precision Digital. However, before we get too much into that meat of the presentation, here are the questions I am almost always asked at these. The most common question I get, it's a combination of two. Can I get a copy of the slides, or will there be a recording of this presentation? In other words, can I review this information later or send it off to my colleagues? And the answer to those questions is yes. We are recording today's presentation, and we will make that available to you as well as the slides you're going to see here today, likely in a couple of days. So I would keep an eye on your email Wednesday and Thursday, and you should get all of that information forwarded along to you, as well as to anyone who may have signed up and yet isn't present with us today, by the end of the week. Secondly, a personal request I like to cover. At the end of this presentation, you are going to potentially see a survey asking us how we did and just a few quick questions about what you have as far as insights for future presentations might be, or how we could improve our performance here. I really appreciate it if you answer those. I read them all over. They're very valuable, and they help us plan for future presentations and come up with topics or introduce new features that people might like to see. So for example, we're doing a little bit of video share here, so you can see me before I just start sharing slides. In fact, later on, I'll be sharing some video of the actual product. Lastly, you have probably already noticed that everyone here today is in listen-only mode. There are just too many attendees for everyone to have an open phone line. The children in the background, the dogs barking, the mail showing up would just distract everyone. It would be impossible to follow along. And so if you have a question, I encourage that. I just ask that you type it into the chat box or use the questions tool. I will pause periodically during the presentation as time allows to address any of those questions you may have. And if we don't get to it in this presentation, great. We'll follow up with you with a phone call. Myself or a product expert will reach out. We'll have those discussions. But don't hesitate to give me feedback during the presentation. Don't hesitate to ask questions. We just won't be doing live back and forth voice. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to go ahead and stop my video so you can see our presentation slides maximized on your screen. And let's talk about Precision Digital's new loop-powered displays and how they allow you to display a 4 to 20 milliamp signal virtually anywhere. So today, what we're going to do is learn the advantages of loop-powered indicators in general and how easy it is to install them. That way you'll know what we're talking about, what two-wire loop-powered instruments are, so that we can have a deeper discussion about these specific products. Then we're going to talk about how you satisfy applications in a safe and hazardous area with panel mount or field indicators. Some may need approval, some might not. How do you mount them? What do they look like? What different products do we have to go into different kinds of locations? Not just for hazardous area, but they require different mounting locations or different sizes of display. And I want you to know that everything we're going to see here today benefits from a common platform. So you're actually learning multiple product lines here today, because everything we talk about, or almost everything we talk about, can apply to the whole range of these displays. Why don't I go ahead and give you a little bit of history on our loop-powered displays and the products you're about to see here. So in 2018, Precision Digital launched our new Loop Leader series. We had a Loop Leader series prior to that. It was also a loop-powered 1/8 DIN meter. But we came out with a new Loop Leader series, our PD 6600 series. And this was just leaps and bounds beyond anything that we had previously. Obviously, the displays are far superior to what we've had in the past. We always try to have the best display on the newest products. And you can see you've got that two-line display. You'll see a lot of that in this presentation, more ruggedized push buttons. We had an integrated gasket, 14 segment characters, all kinds of improvements on the display. But also, we implemented new features that we'd never had before, such as bar graphs with percentage indicators and solid state relays, for example. Well, this line did great for us. And so it only made sense for us to take that line and now in 2022, roll out a similar feature set onto a new series of displays designed for areas that maybe don't require a panel meter. So for example, we've got our Loop Leader Plus large display NEMA 4X enclosure. That is all the features and functions you'd find on that Loop Leader series of panel meter, but in a huge, large display you can see from 75 feet away. We have the ProtEX line. Take that feature set and put it into a fully approved explosion-proof housing, get the product approved, make it available in both aluminum and stainless steel housings. So now you really have the means to put that in an explosion-proof required environment. And if you don't have a hazardous area, the VantageView Plus, a plastic enclosure with all the same capabilities of the ProtEX Plus, but specifically designed for safe areas. So now you have all those great features of the Loop Leader series, but we've rolled them out into packaging that allows you to install them in locations that maybe just aren't quite the right fit for a panel meter. I'm confident this gives Precision Digital the most comprehensive line of loop-powered indicators on the market. Regardless of what you're trying to display, where you want to display it, or how you want to mount it and see it, we've got a loop-powered indicator for that application. Now, this slide's about why I use loop-powered meters, and there's several more that I could go into. But before I do that, I'd really like to get a sense of what your experience is with loop-powered meters. So I'm going to go ahead and share a poll here. I would appreciate your participation. Asking the question, how familiar are you with two-wire loop-powered instruments? Is it something that you have a lot of experience with? Is it the first time you've ever heard of that today? Give me a sense of what your experience level is so that I can tailor this next part of the conversation appropriately. And we've still got lots of answers coming in, so I'll give you another 30 seconds here to get those responses in. By the way, we have a lot of information on this topic. If it turns out that you don't have a lot of experience and you'd like to learn more, we could certainly arrange a webinar just for you or your colleagues. We could direct you to some pre-recorded webinars. We've got some print material. We've got online articles. We have a lot of resources to talk about 4 to 20 million products and their fundamentals. So by their fundamentals, I mean the fundamentals of the basic technology. So if you need any of that, please don't hesitate to reach out after the webinar and let me know. All right, so it looks like we have an audience that is pretty familiar with loop-powered indicators. It looks like almost 80% of you here consider yourselves somewhat familiar or more with two-wire instrumentation. And only about 20% of you would say you're not familiar or it's unknown to you. And similarly, I suppose unsurprisingly, 80% of you say you have used a loop-powered transmitter. So I will keep this part of the presentation very short, but for those of you looking for more info, again, please let me know. We'd be happy to share that. So why use loop-powered indicators? Well, ultimately, the reason you choose to use a loop-powered indicator is because you don't have power conveniently available where you want the display. That's the basic reason why you're going to do this. The most basic decision to make if you want to display a 4 to 20 milliamp signal on a digital display is, should the meter be powered by voltage or off the 4 to 20 milliamp loop? And so that's the question, right? This question here is basically, should I be using a loop-powered meter here? By answering that question, should the meter be powered by line voltage or 4 to 20 milliamp loop, the things to consider are that a loop-powered meter requires no additional power. It's very easy to wire. And any additional digital displays you may want can easily be added into that same loop. What I mean by all of that is this. To install a loop-powered meter, all you need is your power supply. Usually that's a 24-volt supply in the panel, or maybe it's coming all the way from the control room out into the field. You've got your probably two-wire transmitter. And then you have your meter, which in this case would be any of the displays we're looking at here today. And that's your current loop. Current comes out of your power supply, goes to your transmitter to get regulated, comes through the meter for display, and goes back to the power supply. So you only have to hook up 2 wires to your transmitter, 2 wires to your meter, and 2 wires in your power supply. Now, this is your super basic example. Oftentimes what will happen is someone will have the meter in their current loop, but then that current loop is going to go back to, say, a PLC somewhere in the control room. Okay, well, that's perfectly fine. I see in the chat there's some comments on my phenomenal drawings, and so you're welcome for that. I'm glad I could grace you all with my drawings. But hopefully you can see in the scribble work the gist, which is all you needed to do to add this loop powered meter is cut your wires and splice in that loop powered meter in series with that 420 milliamp loop. And ultimately, that is my recommendation. When I am looking at existing installations where I have when I'm looking at new installations, so I'm putting in a new application where I have the ability to install all the instrumentation, the panels, the accessories that I want, it's very easy to say, pick one of our ProView line powered meters and use it as a transmitter power supply and use it as an isolator. But if I'm looking at an existing installation, if I'm walking through a plant and I see there's tanks without level indicators next to them, I see flow meters without displays attached, well, then a loop powered meter is a great choice. Because in that case, all you've got to do is just cut that wire and put that meter in series with it anywhere along that 420 loop. And now I've got a display. So that's where I tend to get started. But there are, of course, many more reasons why you may choose loop power. Now, a great follow-up question then is why choose precision digital loop power meters? Well, we've been making displays for over 40 years. We know what customers are looking for. We know what people are looking for specifically in loop power meters. And we've used that experience to put those features into our products. So you're going to see things here like -40 operating temperature spec ranges, -55 installation temperature ranges, 14 segment characters. We'll talk about commas at length later. There's a lot of detailed features that go into these that just make them the best loop power displays on the market. And that's because we've been doing this so long and we listen to our customers. I talked with what you were going to see today about the fact that these are going to be common features across the product line. So everything we're about to talk about, till further notice, you have available on our Loop Leader series of panel meters, our Loop Leader Plus large display meter, the ProtEX Plus hazardous area indicators, and the VantageView Plus field mount safe area indicator. So all of those pictures you've seen of products thus far, everything you're about to see is common to all of those. By the way, before I move on, I do already have a couple of questions coming in, and that'd be a great time to address them. One of the questions is, for the NEMA 4X rating, are these good for outdoor direct sunlight locations, or would there be a concern about UV damage? I would recommend any of these products for outdoor applications. That is a common feature of these products. Unlike an LED display, an LCD display, fundamentally the same thing you would see at a gas pump. Actually, it's easier to read the more light there is. So you can certainly see the displays. We do use UV resistant materials in all of our constructions. And because they're NEMA 4X, they're great for outdoor use. So I would recommend literally any product you see here for a outdoor application. So here's a list of some of those common features. And we're going to talk more about some of these, so I'm going to go fairly quickly, but you can read them, of course. The same programming menu software and functionality. That's really key. Once you have the opportunity to work with any of these displays, you're going to be familiar with all of these displays. So if you have an opportunity to use the large display meter, well, great. The next time you have a need for a stainless steel explosion-proof unit, you already know it. You know its feature set. You know how to program it. You know what it can do. All of these displays have process indicators, feet and inches level meters, and rate totalizers in the line. They've all got that easy to read dual line display that uses 14 segment characters. They all have a red backlight included standard for enhanced alarm indication. You'll actually get to see that later. It's great. They come standard with 2 open collector outputs, 2 solid state relays, and a 4 to 20 milliamp output option are available. It's worth noting that the software that it comes with is free and used for programming. I recommend you use it. They all have buttons. You can program them with buttons, but the software is just an easier way to do that. Plus, that way you can save your configuration. And of course, there are indicators for all locations, including safe area and hazardous areas with agency approved models. So you'll find that there are, for example, in the field mount units, there's approved and unapproved versions. In the large display, there's approved and unapproved versions, and same for the panel meters. So once again, what do you get with this whole line? You get the same programming, you get the same features and functions we're about to talk about, and you get the same PC software. So you only need one software package on your computer or laptop. In the questions, or in the chat rather, by the way, I just noticed, Todd, you were asking if we had a meter that could provide 24 volts DC to power the transmitter, but is powered by 110. And it looks like you already found out the fact that we do have those products. None of these will do that. A loop power meter will never provide you that power. But if you look on our website or talk to us later, you'll find we have plenty of options for that. So there's fundamentally three display types amongst these loop powered indicators, and they've already been mentioned. That's our process meters, our feet and inches displays, and the rate totalizers. So what those mean is that the process meter is your generic display. It's going to be able to scale that 4 to 20 milliamp signal into any engineering unit you want. So for example, here we've got it displaying 6,900 US gallons. And we call it a process meter because it's just your basic decimal indicator. The bottom display could be used to scale it to a different a different engineering unit. So for example, maybe I have, I want to display it as pounds on the top, but I want to display it as liters on the bottom. Or I want to have percent full on the top, but I want to have gallons on the bottom. You can certainly dual scale it like that, or you can just use the bottom display for a tag. But that is your basic scalable process indicator. Then you've got your feet and inches level meter. Those are specifically for level applications where someone wants to see it in feet and inches. So here you can see you've got 69 feet, 10 inches, and 11/16. That's great for any tank applications you may have, amongst others. But tanks are specified generally in feet and inches, and it's nice for operators to be able to just look at it and intuitively just understand what that feet and inches means. They don't have to try to figure out what 327 inches is. You tell it to them in feet and inches. And then you've got your rate totalizers, connect up to flow meters. There you've got generally your rate on the top. So for example, here we've got the rate in US gallons per hour. And then you've got your total or grand total on the bottom. And you'll note that all of these come with bar graphs. So now not only do I know, well, I've got my, let's take the feet and inches display as an example. Not only do I have it easy to read feet and inches, but now I also can get a sense of where my tank is at from the bar graph, and it's even giving me a percent there so that I can understand how full that really is. But those are the three kinds of displays we refer to: the process meters, the feet and inches level meters, and the rate totalizers. And yes, Jimmy just asked a question. These are three different units you would order. In the ordering guide, in the data sheets, you'll see these are different model numbers to get the specific display you're looking for. Now on that display, there's a couple of really nice features I'd like to point out. The first one is the 14 segment characters. I cannot overstate how handy it is to have those 14 segment digits, because when you are typing very common things into these unit displays or into the tags, they can be very hard to read in a 7-segment display. You can see here what tank looks like in 14 segments compared to tank in 7 segments, and clearly an operator would much rather see it in the 14 segment display. If you have to write T's and K's, the difference is just very dramatic. The other item I commented on earlier was commas. Again, you'd be surprised how simple these little improvements can make to your displays. Because when you're looking at a number this big, your mind can't tell if you're talking 15 million, 1.5 million, 150,000, 155 million, without either counting over digits or seeing those commas. The minute you put those commas on the display, you can quickly just look at it, boom, know what you're talking about. For the operator who wants to walk by, glance at the display, and know what the total is, those commas make a world of difference, especially when you start adding in decimal points in there as well. So now you've got 7 characters, but 2 of which don't count. So do I, 27,000 or 270,000. The commas make all the difference. few other nice features of these displays are that red backlight for alarm indication, and the fact that you can actually make it blink to draw even more attention. So all of these units come with a white backlight standard. However, you can set it up so that in an alarm case, that backlight turns red. And you can set it up so that if you like, the indication itself, the actual digits of the display will blink. And so to give you an idea of what that looks like, I've got a short little video I can play here. And not only is it going to turn red and blink, but you'll see the bottom says high level, because you can change it so that or you can set it up so that on any alarm indication, you've got a custom message that displays on that screen. So now you've got a loop powered indicator you can install anywhere on that 4 to 20 milliamp loop. It's got a great, easy to read display. And though you may not have power there to run lights and horns and things like that, you can have the display totally turn red and start flashing at someone to try to get attention. So forgetting about every other output feature you're going to see, just the ability to put this powerful a display anywhere on a 4 to 20 milliamp loop your operators would like to see it is a huge advantage to almost any application. A few other nice features of the display. I noted our dual scale feature earlier, the fact that I could have, say, feet on the top and gallons on the bottom, or maybe percent on the top and some volume on the bottom, essentially scaling that same 4 to 20 milliamp signal into two different engineering units. And then the display will flip back and forth between showing you the units and the display numbered itself. So people still know what they're looking at, even though you're using both lines for indication. Also, that ability to have rate and total on the same screen, very useful. You'll get to know not only what your operation is doing right now, where people are live operating it, but you can go and you can see your totals, your grand totals. And again, it flashes back and forth showing you what those units are so that you know what it is you're looking at. Let's talk about the output options that are available for a moment. People don't normally associate loop power meters with having particularly useful outputs. Well, that's no longer the case. These loop power meters, sure, they're convenient to wire, you don't have to have power handy, but they can have some pretty powerful outputs. And the first of those are the open collector outputs. Essentially, an open collector output operates just like a relay. It's a switch that turns on in an alarm condition. Now, what makes open collector outputs a little different than a relay is their ratings. They can only support 5 to 30 volts DC at 150 milliamps. So that is useful if, for example, you want to run a light and horn. The lights and horns available from Precision Digital are 24 volt powered, so you can certainly do that. And 150 milliamps is more than enough to run those lights and horns. So if that's all you're doing, you can use the standard open collector outputs. You don't even have to buy options. Just use our standard outputs as alarm outputs. And just like a relay, you just wire it right across it. This is also useful if you want to send signals back to one of our wireless products to transmit some discrete alarm signal to some other location. You want to bring it into a PLC digital input. You've got maybe a data acquisition board, or you've got a telemetry unit you want to bring that alarm condition into. That's a great use for the open collector outputs. And they do come standard, so you might as well use them. We do also have, however, solid state relays available. And these are an option you purchase, but they're useful whenever you need that extra oomph that you generally associate with a real mechanical relay. A solid state relay is just like a mechanical relay, only it doesn't have any moving parts. It's all run through electronics rather than a mechanical wiper and magnetics. And I put the specifications up here just to show you that even though it's a loop powered meter, we can drive some significant voltage and current with these relays. And so if you look at those specs, you'll see that it's 250 volt AC, volt DC at 1 amp rated. So if you're just running a resistive load, you've got an amp of current you can run through these solid state relays at 250 volts AC. We even have UL listed UL code D30 and R30 pilot duty ratings so that you can run inductive loads on these. So if you have a UL panel shop, or you just like the fact that UL lists your products, and you want to use these to drive inductive loads directly, like small motors, small pumps, you want to use it to control a solenoid valve, things like that, then you can certainly do that. And they've been tested by UL and approved for that use. Of course, if you just want to drive an intermediate relay, well, you can certainly do that too. You want to use it to drive a control relay that might be controlling your much larger pumps and blowers and things like that. But if you combine the two of them, you now have two solid state relays, and you now have two solid state you have two solid state relays and two open collector outputs. So you now have a 4-switch output device essentially to run your lights, your horns, your pumps, your other devices. Though it is loop powered, it very much has the capabilities of a line powered meter. And here's an example of what you can do with all of that. So this is an example of our loop powered meter doing pump control, where you're bringing in your 4 to 20 milliamp signal. That's the direct input to your device. And that's what's being displayed on the actual display itself. It's turning red to let me know that I'm in high alarm. So though both my pumps are on right now, I'm not keeping up. So I better send an alarm. So you can see I've got my open collector outputs, which are being used for high and low alarms. And then I've got my solid state relays, which are being used to drive control relays, which are what's turning on my main pumps. Those are high amp pumps. I can't run them off an amp. So I've got that intermediate relay in between the two, and that's controlling the main pumps directly and the backup pump directly, but that's being driven by my solid state relays. So you can very much use this loop powered indicator as a pump control, and just use it because as a pump controller, but just use it because you like the display. You like how easy it is to wire. You like the mounting package. Prior to the loop leader series, we've never had loop powered indicators with this kind of capability. You can also use these for batch control in very much the same way. Use your solid state relays to drive your solenoids, use your open collector outputs for your alarms. And because you've got two solid state relays, you can actually drive two solenoid valves, and now you've got two-stage batch control. You just enter in what your preset value is with the push buttons, hit the start button, and it'll batch up to it. And you'll notice, by the way, we're pushing buttons on one of our PD6900 explosion-proof units. So it's worth noting those through glass buttons. We'll talk more about that later, but you can push the buttons through the glass without removing the cover. Lastly, as far as outputs go, you have the isolated 4 to 20 milliamp output available. Now, obviously, that requires another power supply if you want to keep it isolated, because we cannot provide power and yet be loop powered. But it means that you can have your field loop, your power supply, running your transmitter, coming back to the panel meter, and then going back to your power supply. And then you can use the loop powered indicator as your 4 to 20 milliamp isolator for your field to control room wiring loop. So if you need to get, say, a 1 4 to 20 in to 1 4 to 20 out signal isolator, well, why not use one of these and get a display out of it as well as all those other great features? Once again, the easiest way to program your loop powered meter is use the software. One of my favorite parts of it is the fact that you just connect your USB cable directly to the meter. You don't need any other power supplies. The USB power alone is enough to light up that display. So as you make changes, you can keep an eye on the display and make sure that it's doing what you want it to do. Now that you've got your programming in the software, you can save it, you can send it off to someone else for programming. You can refresh it when inevitably someone messes up the programming in the field 3 years from now. Hey, I've got that saved to a file. Let's just load in what we know is good. So I highly recommend you use the software. You certainly don't have to. There are people who don't, but I would recommend that. And now, before we get into specifics of the Loop Leader Plus, the ProtEX Plus, and the VantageView Plus, let me just quickly touch on a couple of questions people have asked. So Amir is wondering, is there any HART-supported display to connect to more than one HART transmitter? Well, I'll use that question as an opportunity to just talk about HART in general in these products. These products are not HART products. We do not communicate with HART, nor do we read HART information from HART transmitters. And you cannot talk to these products with a HART communicator. However, they are what we call HART transparent, which means if you put our indicators in a HART loop, we are not going to disrupt that signal. So going back to this slide for a minute, what that means is if I have this going on and I have a HART transmitter Well, if I want to be back in my control room and I want to hook up my heart communicator, here's my very beautifully drawn heart communicator. I can do that. It will work in this 4 to 20 milliamp loop, even though our meter is in line with it. Even though we're in that heart loop in series, we will not interfere with what that heart communicator is doing as far as talking to the transmitter. You know, if I have a device, a PLC in my control room that's talking heart to that transmitter, same story. My meter won't be aware of it, but we also won't disrupt it. So we don't have any kind of multivariable heart capabilities on these. But if you have folks that want to have access to heart for calibration or whatnot, you can certainly do that and we won't cause a problem with it. Someone anonymously requested, is there an IO module to add a relay out like the ProView with our PD6000 for relay expansion module? There is not. The most outputs you're going to get from any of these products are 2 open collector output standard, and then options for 2 solid state relays and a 4 to 20 milliamp output. Todd was wondering if they have CSA approvals. They do, as a matter of fact. All of the products you're seeing here, with the exception of the unapproved versions, if you're talking the hazardous area products, they all have CSA approvals for either explosion-proof approvals or intrinsically safe approvals / non-incentive approvals, or possibly both in some cases. Todd was also wondering if the software is available free of charge. It is. You just download it. There's no licensing. There's no upfront cost. There's no fee per program. You just download it. You start using it. Steve is suggesting I mentioned the snooper. Okay, that's a great point. We do not have that capability on these products. That is a Modbus scanner capability, but we do have products, if you're using Modbus instead of Heart, that can be Modbus scanners and that can read out multivariable transmitter information. But now you're talking a line powered display with RS-485 Modbus, and it's pretty far afield from what we're doing here. But if anybody needs that, I'd love to talk about multivariable Modbus transmitters with you. We'll just do it offline. And lastly here, Jimmy is wondering, can you lock meter scaling? You certainly can do that. There are passwords in here that you can set so that people cannot go in there and make those changes. There are some other questions, but I think it'd be good to move on just so we try to keep aware of the fact that everybody here has valuable time. So let's briefly go over each individual product and just talk about what makes it unique. And to do that, we're going to start with our Loop Leader Plus. The Loop Leader Plus is our large display loop leader. And when I say large display, I mean a large display. It comes in an EMA 4X IP65 rated enclosure. It's wall mountable. We have pipe mount options for it as well. It's got all those types of displays on it, but it has a huge 2.8-inch 5-character alphanumeric top display. You can see that 75 feet away. I know we did testing with almost the entire company here, and everybody could see it at 75 feet. Some could see it further away, but we are comfortable with saying 75 feet. So if you've got a tank that you don't want to have to walk right up to, if you've got a process going on the other side of a road or a parking lot, you want to be able to see that. If you want to be able to see something from anywhere on a production floor, the Loop Leader Plus is the way to go. And because you can mount it anywhere that you have a 4 to 20 milliamp loop, you don't really have to worry about where you have power. The exception to that is that only on the Loop Leader Plus, the backlight is DC powered. The backlight does not have enough. I'm sorry, the backlight is too big. Physically, it's just too large to light up and do so well with just loop power. So if you want to use the white or the red backlight on the Loop Leader Plus, you'll have to separately 24-volt power that. Beyond that, it's very much the same product. Same style of display, same 3 versions of it available. We do have ATEX and ICX certified as intrinsically safe. We have CSA coming for that. We have a light and horn and reset button accessory available to it, which will mount a light and horn on it for you. And it'll just come with that ready to go. And you'll notice on these, there are no push buttons. The buttons are inside the electronics cabinet, like the swing out door on the bottom. So if you want to have a plastic control station with push buttons, usually that's not mounted directly at the meter. The meter is usually mounted too high for that. So we have separate remote control button push stations you can get to bring it in. And what I'd like to do is just show you what one of these looks like briefly. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share and bring myself back on video. And just off camera here, I have one of these Loop Leader Plus units, and I just think it's a nice thing for you to get a sense of the real size of one of these. So if I put it on my shoulder, you can see it's about the size of a laptop if I were to stand a laptop upright. And here's your 2.8-inch digits. They're super easy to read. They're incredibly clear. The backlight, because it's 24-volt powered, is always constant and very bright. And while I have it up here, what I can do is I'm going to slowly increase my 4 to 20 milliamp signal until I go into alarm state. And you'll notice, much like the pump control example I was showing you earlier, I have a light and horn stack mounted here. This one has 3 colors. So I'm using an open collector output to drive the horn and the green light, and then solid state relays to drive the yellow light and the red light. So I'm going to increase this up. You will hear the alarm go off, and I apologize for that. But there's my yellow light, my green light, and there is my red black light with flashing indication. And you'll see on the bottom display, it's going to tell you in a moment, yes, I'm reading gallons, but also that I have triggered my high alarm, and that relay 1 and relay 2 are on. So that is our Loop Leader Plus. When you compare that with the size of, say, the VantageView Plus, one of our standard field mount indicators we've been looking at, certainly there's a nice display on the VantageView Plus, but you can see it's a much smaller device, larger digits than you're going to get on a panel meter, but nothing in comparison to that Loop Leader Plus display. All right, and I'll get our screen there, share back up going here. So let's talk about pricing on the Loop Leader Plus, just to give you an idea of where that stands. Your Loop Leader Plus is going to start at around $1,300. That is for your unapproved, no outputs process meter. And you can get that up as high as $1,800 if you go with a approved rate totalizer with all the outputs possible. Now, the ProtEX Plus and the VantageView Plus are very similar products. They are both in field mount enclosures. They look very much the same. The real differentiator between all these products and each other are the fact that VantageView is in a plastic enclosure and has no hazardous area approvals. It's just NEMA 4X and IP66. Whereas the ProtEX Plus is in your painted aluminum or your stainless steel enclosures, and that's how you're going to get your CSA approvals for explosion-proof ratings and your ATEX and IECEX intrinsically safe approvals. This is also the first time we have had products available in stainless steel. So it's worth noting, any of you who have applications that are salt water related or have particularly harsh chemicals, or just have customers who really want rugged indication, it's the first stainless steel product series we've got. We're very proud of it. Hopefully you have a chance to use that. A few nice features across this whole line, we do have capacitive touch through window button programming. Capacitive touch or cap touch is the same technology you use in your cell phone. Everyone's familiar with it. Everyone essentially trusts it. And it is an improvement over our pass-through glass buttons that used infrared indication. Those generally did work well, but the cap touch is just much better. And it lets us use more of that window for display purposes. The electronics pop in and out once you've taken the cover off, and you don't need any tools to do that. You literally just pull it out and snap it back in. And it's displayable at any 90-degree angle. So right now you can see this, the way it's oriented on the screen, as though it were mounting on a vertical pipe. You have a pipe running down behind it, and then you put a U-bolt through those slots. But if I, for example, had this mounted on a vertical pipe, a horizontal pipe, I would have to rotate the enclosure 90 degrees. All I have to do is just pull the electronics module out, turn it 90 degrees, and snap it back in. So it is mountable at any 90-degree angle, regardless of how you're mounting its enclosure. You should be able to get it so that you can see the display properly. It's also worth noting, for these particular products, we again have pipe mounting kits available, and we have stainless steel tags. These enclosures have a stainless steel tag loop. You might see a small loop there. And that's so that you can run a lead seal or a wire loop through there. And oftentimes people will use that for stainless steel indicator tags. It's also nice you can see there's a small hole there on the enclosure. So you could run a lead seal through the lid hole and that loophole, and now somebody can put their lead seal there and tamper-proof it. For pricing, starting on the low end, you've got your VantageView Plus process meter, no approvals in the plastic box. That's going to be $539. But you'll note it has no approvals other than, of course, CE, which may be useful to actually a few people I see in this attendee list. And then you've got your ProtEX Plus meters, which carry your hazardous area approvals, and those can go up as high as $1259 if you're talking a fully featured stainless steel feet and inches meter. It goes all the way up to a $1250. So really, it depends on the product, the approvals, the enclosure material, the outputs, runs the whole range of pricing, all depending on what you need. So with that, folks, we are starting to come near the end. I've got a few other questions here I'd like to address, but first, what I'd like to do is just show you a real quick recap video. It's a short 2-minute video we have that really drives home all the points we talked about. Will make especially good for you who may have missed something at the beginning. Make sure that you leave here with all the highlights. And I'm going to play this right off the Precision Digital website. So if you will bear with me one moment. All right, I will play this and I'll be back here in 2 minutes.
Introducing the most comprehensive line of loop-powered indicators on the market. From Precision Digital. This complete line of loop-powered meters include the Loop Leader Series panel meters, Loop Leader Plus large display meters, ProtEX Plus explosion-proof aluminum and stainless steel meters, and VantageView Plus plastic NEMA 4X meters. This comprehensive line of loop-powered process meters, feet and inches level meters, and rate totalizers offers an abundance of common features for a variety of applications. All the meters in this line come with an information-packed display with a vertical bar graph, a red backlight for alarm conditions, automatic unit conversion, a dual-line display for dual scaling, 2 open collectors standard for a variety of pulse or alarm outputs, 2 solid-state relays option, and an intuitive MeterView XL programming software. Some of the newest features in this line include the Loop Leader Plus's large 2.8-inch display, making it the largest digit size for a loop-powered meter on the market. The ProtEX Plus and VantageView Plus's easy snap-in electronics module, and the Cap Touch through window buttons, using the same technology in modern smartphones. This line includes models that can be installed in practically any environment or application, from panel meters and large displays to plastic NEMA 4X field mount meters and aluminum or stainless steel explosion-proof meters. To learn more about this complete line of loop-powered meters, watch the full version of this video at predig.com/loop-powered.
All right, well, thank you very much, folks, for letting me share that with you. And before we wrap up and handle the last couple of questions, I did notice that there are a lot of distributors here in the audience who sell Precision Digital product. And so I think it's worth mentioning our PD4 Loop Leader Plus large display intro meter. Certainly, we have demos for the Loop Leader Plus that are essentially what I just showed you earlier, a 3-light stack with a horn mounted on top of our Loop Leader Plus large display meter. They come with a 4 to 20 milliamp generator. So you can do the demo that I did for you earlier and even show how those lights indicate you can do things like pump control and such. But if you don't want the cost and the complexity of a plug-in demo that you have to really walk somebody through and cover all of that detail with, we have what we call our intro meter here, which is just the enclosure of the PD4 Loop Leader Plus with a fixed paper display and some marketing bullets mounted right to it. So literally you just have to hold it up, ask someone if they can see the display, and the product essentially has demoed itself. I actually have one of these here, so let me show you that on video. So here is the true Loop Leader Plus demonstrator. that I showed you earlier. Actually, the new ones we're making today have a push button in the middle to silence the horn, but essentially that's what they are. And that has mounting feet, so you can stand it up on your desk. It's got a 4 to 20 milliamp signal generator on there to provide the signal and power the backlight. It's a great plug-in demo with all the features. However, this is our Loop Leader Plus intro meter. If you don't want to have to worry about plugging things in, you don't want to connect it up to your transmitter, you just want something easy to show the product, this is a fixed paper display inside the same housing that we use on our PD4 Loop Leader Plus. You'll notice there's no wires coming in and out of it. There's no electronics in it. It's just a empty plastic shell that shows you the size of the display. And on the front, on the bottom, as well as on the back, you've got all sorts of bullet points that lets you point out all those features we talked about here today when you're showing it to your customers. So if you want an easy demo to give of that large display unit, you can't get much easier than that. And it's $33. So it's not going to break the bank to give it a try. But if you want the full featured demos, of course, we have demos of all of our products available. Get in touch and I'm happy to talk to you about any of those. But the intro meter is very easy to show, much like I did here. You just need to hold it up and show it to someone. And the point is made. It's a big display that will show them what they want to know, where they want to know it. So with that, I just have a few last questions, and let me see if I can find some interesting ones here for us to go over. First of all, I should say, for those of you who may be departing, if you have any questions that didn't get addressed here, please reach out afterwards. Be happy to cover any material that we didn't cover here. Also, I have one final poll for you, which is just to let me know if you'd like us to reach out and talk about really anything. Do you want to talk about a product? Do you want to talk about an application? We'd be happy to do that. Just let me know you'd like us to reach out. Also, again, personal request, there's a survey you may see when this webinar wraps up. If you could take 2 minutes or less and fill that out, that would be great. I think the average time to fill it out is 15 seconds. So most people can afford that, but it is extremely helpful to us in planning future webinars. So a couple of interesting questions I have from folks. So what are the environmental ratings? Everything that you've seen here today is at the very least NEMA 4X IP66. So they're all good for outdoor, spray down, dust height applications. Obviously, some have hazardous area approvals, but you say environmental ratings, so usually that's the question. And everything you saw here is NEMA 4X IP66. Another question was about explosion-proof and intrinsic safety. Do units have both? Which ones have which? So the Loop Leader Plus is an intrinsically safe product. It's got ATEX and IECX approvals for intrinsic safety, with more approvals on the way, literally waiting on some final certs from the agencies as we speak. But that's not in any kind of a hardened housing. So obviously that's just an intrinsically safe product, and eventually it will be non-incentive and intrinsically safe for CSA and UL. And then you've got the metal enclosures and the ProtEX Plus. That is explosion proof and intrinsically safe. It's got CSA ratings for explosion proof, or CSA certified as explosion proof, and ATEX and IECX intrinsically safe. Again, with more approvals on the way, I would suspect by the end of the quarter, we're going to have at least 1 or 2 more agencies on all of those. As far as the panel meters go, just to note it, we did talk about how this all started with our Loop Leader panel meter. Those are also available as non-incentive and intrinsically safe from CSA, UL, ATEX, and IECEX rather. One of our anonymous attendees has asked, what are the power requirements for these? Well, these are all loop powered meters. So the power required to light them up is just the 4 to 20 milliamp loop. Now you may be asking voltage drop. That's a valid question. And generally the voltage drop on these would be about 1.5 volts. That's how much drop you have of voltage in that 24 volt that's driving the 4 to 20 milliamp loop. Now that's without the backlight. With the backlight, you might get up to around 4.5 volts. But if you're concerned about voltage drop, these have a 1.5 volt drop without backlight. Once again, in both of those cases, power requirements and voltage drop, it's worth noting that the backlight on the large display unit is separately 24 volt powered. It's just too big, and it cannot be bright enough at that size off of loop power. Thank you, everybody, by the way, for filling out that survey. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. Appreciate that. I'm not going to share those results, but we'll reach out to everybody there who did have questions in this or and want us to reach back out. Any other interesting questions before we wrap up here? No, it looks like that'll just about do it. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate you being with us here today. It looks like the vast majority of you stuck it out to the end, so I thank you for that. I hope you have an opportunity to use these. I hope if you do not use loop-powered indicators a lot, you give them a shot. I think you're going to find that their ease of use combined with all the features you can now get really make them a great choice for applications where you don't have 120 volts handy and where you might be working with, for example, a pre-existing installation and wanting to add a display to it, or just where you don't want to have to worry about running power to your indicators. So give them a shot, see how they do. I'd love to get feedback and pictures. So hopefully the next presentation you see these in, we've got some actual video or images of installation photos that you folks can share with me. If you have any other questions, reach out. Otherwise, I thank you very much. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and week. Thank you.